What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
I thought they'd be more upset about this, really.
Oh, this is about what I'd expect. They've established a clear chain of command, so they can maintain order even if they lose their commander.
Benimaru, unlike me, was pretty indifferent about it. A disjointed chain of command makes it impossible to carry out any sort of mission. Any force needs someone in charge, after all, and I can sympathize with anybody who wants that role clearly defined. But wasn't this just a hodgepodge of heroes who'd never worked together before? If they could get themselves organized this quickly, then hats off to them, I guess.
Are we, good in that respect?
Of course. Gabwa is always around if I'm not, and she has many fine people under her as well. Tactical theory is a required subject for all members of Team Kurenai, so any one of us could feasibly serve as commander.
Whoa, nice confidence there. I never learned any of that. When did they?
Well, great. So if they aren't making any moves right now, what's up with them?
I decided to leave our chain of command in the capable hands of Benimaru and our other core leaders. There was no point in me worrying about it, so I brought the conversation back to our current reality. The army camped out on floor 70.
For now, they're likely investigating whether there are any survivors on the other floors. Along those lines, I'm afraid it's hard luck for them. They might have found some on other floors, but there won't be a trace here.
Benimaru sounded almost like he pitied them. That made sense to me, too. I knew there were no survivors among the Imperial army in the labyrinth, but they had to be down here in part to find their friends. I could understand if they wanted to track down survivors to help beef up their ranks. We all knew that was pointless, though, and in the meantime, it wasn't much fun to just sit and wait for them to do something.
Should we have Adalmann attack them?
Shion nodded at my casual suggestion. She must have been getting pretty bored, not to mention eager to kick some ass, but as long as we had ample forces in the labyrinth, she still had to bodyguard me here. She understood that, of course, but she still wanted to get this over with and join in the battle outside, I'm sure.
Well, I doubt we'll get anything more on them by watching them like this, no.
Benimaru chuckled at Shion's reaction as he said that. Then I sent an order to Adalmann, who promptly responded.
Behold my grand actions, my master.
Sounded like Shion wasn't the only one itching for a fight. Adalmann had his forces at the ready for the Empire, too. They had certainly enjoyed a long streak of victories, and it sounded like they wanted to keep the momentum going and round things out with one final victory.
Okay, best of luck.
Yes, master.
That bit of encouragement was the one signal he needed. Like a raging current, Adalmann's army opened the gate and set off. 1 hour later, we were greeted with a fairly astonishing sight. There were only 3 survivors left in the Imperial force, but only 3 survivors on our side, too. Adalmann, Alberto, the Death Dragon, and that was it. So now it was 3 on 3. The other 100 or so had already fought the undead forces, killing them but losing their lives in the process, so there were no reinforcements for Adalmann's side. His regular army of undead would revive themselves in 3 hours, though, so I figured victory was in the bag by then. But
what an interesting person.
Yes, very impressive fighting. I'd love to take a crack at him.
That was some rare praise from Diablo and Shion. The enemy had some real winners among them after all, 3, even. One was a dashing sword fighter, currently locked in combat with Alberto. One was a beautiful wizard, matching Adalmann blow for blow in a magic battle. Finally, one was a burly warrior, holding the Death Dragon back all by herself. They had some familiar-looking glowing armor that they summoned out of nowhere, so I assumed they were in with the legend-class dude that Testarossa killed earlier. They were all of the same design, so they must have belonged to the same organization.
That sword fighter is fiendishly strong. An even match for Alberto, I'd say.
Benimaru remarked. Alberto and the dashing man were exchanging god-tier blows at a level 1 almost never saw. Both fought with sword and shield, and both were definitely making a good fight out of this. Like Benimaru said, an even match. In fact, the guy seemed even stronger than the one Testarossa beat. Maybe he was higher up in that ranking of theirs.
I think Adalmann's faith in you is slipping. Failing to keep up with someone like that in magic.
No need to be so harsh, Diablo. That armor protects him from magic of all elements, whether holy or evil. It's no wonder Adalmann's at a disadvantage.
Shion's commentary was correct. Adalmann had the skill holy evil inversion, but that legend-class armor was just totally cheating. In terms of resisting magic, it offered almost complete protection, and you'd need something as powerful as disintegration to take it out, a spell in Adalmann's wheelhouse, but his opponent wasn't letting him break it out. He was trying to use some smaller magic to leave his opponent open and strike him there, but I think both sides were thinking the same thing there, and so it looked like they'd be struggling for a while to come. But I definitely couldn't forget about the last guy, either. A real piece of work, him. I mean, he was taking on a death dragon all by himself. In his case, it seemed like he had abandoned any hope of actually winning. The death dragon's regenerative abilities were so impossible to counter, he knew he didn't stand a chance of offing it entirely, so he continued humbly fighting on, trusting that his companions would see themselves to victory. Really, if it wasn't for that behind-the-scenes effort, this would have been over long ago. The death dragon was too much for even Zoe to defeat, so if this dude was decently keeping his own against it, he was more trouble than I thought.
So how do you think it'll turn out?
I asked. Everyone replied in different ways.
Alberto is the superior fighter, but given his gear disadvantage, he's going to lose this battle.
Adalmann is trying to grab victory too quickly. If he could approach this with a cooler head, he would have won by now, but as is, he lacks much of a decisive factor. If Alberto is defeated in the meantime, he's going to be overwhelmed fast, I think.
There is no such thing as defeat. Only victory shall be ours.
That all made logical sense, except for Shion. Benimaru and Diablo had similar opinions. They both saw Adalmann and Alberto losing. As for Shion, well, I guess she was attempting psychological warfare or something? That sounded more like a wish than an opinion to me.
Okay, so we'll lose this round? Is that trouble?
Well, even if they do lose, we still have the other dungeon marvels on hand. Besides, I can beat them, so we should be just fine,
said Benimaru.
Of course.
Shion added.
And I can beat them, too, so please don't worry, Sir Rimuru.
Benimaru sounded really confident, so I figured we'd find a way out of this. Shion, meanwhile, was Shion. I'd have liked to ask her for some evidence to back that up, but I doubted she'd have an answer. It was certainly in character for her, so I was glad for all that spirit anyway.
There is no need for concern, Sir Rimuru. Among the marvels, we still have Zijin, Sir Veldora's disciple. As long as he remains in the game, I believe you have nothing to be bothered about.
Diablo added a at the end for effect. It was rare for him to offer praise to other people. It reassured me a bit. Maybe everything was going to be okay. As we spoke, the match seemed to be approaching its climax. I was hoping maybe they'd find a way to win if they were given more time, but unfortunately, the enemies must have had that same thought.
I was hoping we could push right through you, but apparently now when you die, you can boast in hell about how much you riled me up.
The dashing man shouted at Alberto. Did he have some kinda secret move he was keeping under wraps until now?
Before you die, allow us to introduce ourselves. I am Krishna, a knight of the Empire, the 17th ranked Imperial Guardian.
I am Reha, ranked 94th.
I am Bazin, rank 35th.
Ah, so they are Imperial Guardians. Gadra told me about them, but they really did have a great lineup, I guess. The man Testarossa beat was ranked 11th, but I really thought Krishna was a better fighter than him. Maybe your number wasn't directly correlated with your actual ability. Given how Reha acted a lot more upper crust than Bazin, I think my hunch was correct. But back to the battle. After that pause to give out their names, Adalmann's side seemed to have rallied a bit. I thought it'd help them get back on track, but sadly, no dice. Krishna versus Alberto was the decider here, especially once Krishna broke Alberto's cursed sword. Broke, or shattered? Maybe more the latter. It was a huge difference in weapon performance. That cursed sword was a fine piece of work from Karabe, you know. It was the best weapon Alberto could wield, although no average person ever could. But he was pitting it against a legend-class blade. Krishna's fighting style, it seemed, involved waging extended combat to gradually damage his opponent's weapon until he had a chance to smash it fully apart. Hindsight is 20/20 and all, but at least we learned a bit about his strategy for the future. With the loss of his weapon, Alberto was defeated, and with his stout partner gone, Adalmann was now at a disadvantage. He proved surprisingly able to hold his ground, pulling off some brilliant defensive maneuvers you wouldn't expect from a rearguard fighter, but soon he was overpowered and brought to his knees. Now it was 3-on-1 against the Death Dragon, and before long, he was gone, too. If Alberto's sword didn't break like that, I'm sure it would have turned out differently. It's absurd to expect a magician to compete against a warrior in physical combat, so I'm gonna pin the blame for this on him. In fact, I should praise all of them for drawing out all their enemies' inner workings for us. In the end, though, things worked out as Benimaru and Diablo predicted. The enemy now had 2 more keys, but no helping that now. The opponent put up a good fight, and they deserved to be applauded. So Krishna's 3-person party dealt us the first truly bitter defeat of this campaign. Well, we can do a post-mortem on that encounter later. Let's move on. The big screen was now displaying a dual simulcast of the battles on floors 79 and 90, and in both cases, they seemed to be reaching their climax. Kumara, I have to say, was really taking this to extremes. I suppose she was out for revenge against that bearded guy, though, so it only made sense. Apito, on the other hand, was duking it out in another surprisingly close match. I'd put her strength as about the same level as Hinata's, but without the magic, and if this guy who looked like the commander was fighting on an even keel with her, he had to be good. Real lady killer, too, I bet, but absolutely on par with Krishna before. So how would it turn out? We all had our eyes glued on the big screen, watching with bated breath. Major General Minutes, dressed in his most prized of tailored suits, strolled through the labyrinth. The design of his outfit was the same as any regular officer's, but the fabric was different. Every thread of it had been carefully selected, with magic force woven right into the cloth. A single suit would cost as much as a colonel's annual salary, but it offered luxury on a level even Minutes would be satisfied with. Elegance, in a word, was what Minutes was all about, and that was what made him so dissatisfied with his current situation. War was supposed to be fought with overwhelming force, intimidating the enemy and aiming for victory without a fight. Sacrificing lives was out of the question, and if your own troops were making that sacrifice, that called your commander's competence into question. It was precisely because of this that Minutes had declared this operation a failure before it even began. However,
well, I suppose it's the curse of the servant class, not being properly able to state the obvious out loud.
Even with that complaint, Minutes smiled boldly. He usually didn't receive much attention, as Kanzi's serving under him had a tendency to hog the spotlight, but Minutes himself was one of the Imperial Army's greatest heroes. Just because it went against his fashion sense didn't mean he was soft enough to abandon a war.
This Rimuru character, though, he does enjoy making life difficult, doesn't he? And I suppose anyone would if they had the chance. But sending me, the commander, alone to some random place? Now our small gathering of brave men and women might be scattered and picked off, one by one. I'm sure Kanzi's will find a way to survive, but...
Minutes was talking to himself, not caring who heard him, and in spite of all the vitriol, he looked pretty content. It was the first time in a while that he felt his heart soar like this. Not once in his life had he ever felt exposed to so much danger.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. A big thanks to the AnimeKouhai patrons who made this video possible. Sanketh Chelu, Minotaur, Chad Vota, I Like Anime, Ray Perez, Chris Guzman, Speed Saber, James Waters, Arijit Das, Quilly Buckner, Curtis Loban, Darius King, Judah Herrera, Justa Guy, Jason Martin, Misael W. Hernandez, Benjamin Villar, Funky Junkie 22, Jovi, Jason Reyes, Donald Williams, Moab A, Day of Light, John M, John Charles, Godman Gaming, Akon Engok, Markithian Tidwell, Andre L. Hamilton, Adrian, Sean Sinclair, Kumo, Tibush, Chang, John L., James, Tojam, Edgar Fuentes, JV, Dirty Old Hobo, Gonsi Direco, Thomas, J., Christ, Juan Ignacio, Joshua Cousins, Jose Hernandez, Vethelny, Lunel Scarlett, Khalid, Christian Deshazer, Cal Robs, Divine C. Harris, Destiny Smith, Panda Cats, Aaron Alarcon, DeAndre Nance, Monty Boy 98, D-Man, Divinay, Wise Viking, Ruben, Luis Caro, Pedro Robles, Kemal Ebanks, Chris Duncan Jr., Isaac, Shadow Wolf 660, Koala King 93, Devon, RN Bart, Little 95, Coyote de Peza, This Is Not My Username, Mizzle Bizzle, Zephyrus, Alver, Normal Defate, Joshua Andrade, Jaya Keshav, Gary Miles, Dragon Spawn 666, Adrian, Marvin Emmerich, Alex Gomez, J. Rule, Nate, Big Q, Sayonori, Alfredo Renteria, Lil Tier, Liron Sankap, Eric Haas, Christopher Mash, Edward Garcia, BFGR, Ilex Y, Rory M. Brassel, Sri Nanduri, JDZ 2040, Foolish Prophets, Ethan Madison, Louis Strutter, Charles Bailey, Sky T, Diego Ginoza, Mathis Dangle, Nick H, Andre Hamilton, Jason Torres, Sesh, Sergio Aguilar, Martin Ramos, Luminosity, Guy Ansley, Simon Road, Emperor WSA, Mika Espinosa, George Hage, Stabby Cakes. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.